former Manchester United captain and defender, a manager, of course, of a variety of different teams in English football, Steve Bruce. And Steve opened up to Simon about a whole bunch of things. And, of course, one of the subjects there was the abuse that he suffered when he was in the hot seat at Newcastle.
I do believe the people who are bumped into in the street, not the people on social media, the vast majority are bumped into the street say, hey, you didn't do a bad job. You did all right. Yeah. And that's what it'll be. It's never going to be a roaring success. And it was never going to be. Because we didn't have the resources to do it.
Does it disappoint you? Do you look back on it and think, for me, when I lost Palace, it broke my heart for a period of time.
I know it did.
And for you to lose Newcastle, you kind of lose Newcastle, don't you? You go in there and manage the team, and then the wheels are coming off. You're getting barrel loads of abuse.
And it bordered on ridicule, a bit like what you're talking about. People take Harry Maguire.
Well, this is my point.
This is the thing. It's like a Harry Maguire taking the that. Do you know Craig Hope, on my third game in charge, said I'd sent on a substitute and just told him to go and play anywhere he wanted. As if. It was a sort of all of them came off the same hymn sheet. And, you know, it's as if I'd send on a player to say, go and just play anywhere you want. And then the following week we got badly beaten at Norwich. We were hopeless. He said that I couldn't take a warm-up. You know, he's actually putting these things down. And I wasn't even into my tenure now in Newcastle. I just started. And I thought, it's going to be very, very difficult, because that's just the start of it. And it never ceased.
And it never ceased. And he hasn't forgotten, Simon, clearly. I mean, it's a considerable period of time on. I think a lot of it gets to him because he's from Corbridge, which is up in the northeast. He sees himself as one of their own, if you like. And some of the flack he took has clearly stuck with him.
Well, I think he felt that it was unfair and unjustified. And I think he felt that certain people, and a particular journalist, Craig Hope, that he referred to, started with an agenda that they didn't want him there in the first place, and did everything they possibly could to ensure that the reporting of him was reported in a certain way, and he was given examples. Now, I'm sure Craig would have a different view. Lee Clayton certainly did yesterday, because he phoned me up about telling me that he felt that Brucey was given an easy ride in that particular podcast.
Lee's now back with the Daily Mail, right?
Indeed. And so protecting one of his own there. But
as you'd expect.
Well, listen, that's fine. I don't have an issue with it. But Steve felt that there was an unfairness. Of course, it was a football club that he wanted to manage. It was a football club that he had an opportunity to manage in 2004 and then again in 2006. He wanted the job. It was something that it meant a lot to him. And ultimately, he became a product of Mike Ashley's ownership to some extent. Whoever Ashley put in place that didn't go against Ashley. Benitez went against Ashley. So he then curried favour with the Newcastle fans. He didn't produce a particularly great side. They didn't play great football. They often had teams that, you know, like that 19% possession against Man City. But because he back-channeled into the media and made it clear that his relationship with Ashley wasn't great, he enjoyed a certain popularity, whereas Steve Bruce was more akin to managing it with the resources that Mike Ashley was prepared to give him and get on with it, and didn't create any ructions as a result of it.
Were the Newcastle fans not just against Steve Bruce, though, from the beginning? Because
that's his point.
If you look at his career, you looked at it and you thought, well, okay, I thought he'd rescued his career, actually, when he went to... Because when he went to Birmingham, he was there for 6 years. He had two promotions. And that's where... Because before that, I mean, you had him...
I did.
For 3 months.
I did.
He walked out on the job.
So if anyone's going to have any rancor with him, he didn't just walk out of a job. He got injuncted and put in a very difficult position in court. So we had a very difficult relationship for a few years, and he addressed that in the podcasts and apologised, which he didn't need to do because we rehearsed his speech. I know what kind of manager he was when I had him. I know why. One of the things that I took away from when I first met him, because I didn't want to interview him, was now I know why you were Man United captain. Now I know why you got to captain the biggest club in the world at a time when they just started their engines and started to win everything, because you embody everything that a leader should embody. And he was also forward-thinking, young and dynamic. And if he carried that on...
But he wasn't showing any loyalty in those early years.
Well, fine. And we've had that conversation.
So you saw that. But you still
loyalty's
went
got nothing
for
to do with this particular conversation, is it? I mean, ultimately...
Well, no, it's about... I think he was past his best when he took the Newcastle job. I think he was a very good manager at Birmingham, and I think he was in the game.
I think the Hull fans would say he was a very good manager there as well.
Well, 4 months after he took the job, he lost the job at Newcastle. He was back at West Bromwich Albion, and I thought that was just too soon for him because he'd been through... his family had suffered, he'd been through a lot, and it was just like, it's there, so I take it. And I think then he's been 24 years. I mean, he's done 1,000 games in the game. You have to respect what he's done.
Absolutely.
But I just felt maybe the Newcastle fans were feeling, I think maybe as a young manager,
but know whether I like to agree with it at times or not. And I don't agree with it in certain respects when people are making allegations about how unfairly Harry Maguire's being treated. It's all media led. That often the narrative can be created. And the thought process is like Martin O'Neill said a brilliant thing on Monday, which is if you get out of bed a few times early and convince people that you're an early riser, you can lay in bed for the rest of your life. And if you create a narrative in people's minds that this is that and that is this and this is the other, then you're rowing upstream all the time. And if the narrative comes in that he's an Ashley man, he doesn't play particularly attractive football, he's a dinosaur, then you built that into certain people's minds, and certain people will start to proliferate that information. Did he do a good job at West Bromwich? No, he did a poor job, and he knows he did. He'll tell you that the reasons why were maybe Ron Golay, who was the chief executive at West Brom, sold him a pup. Look at West Bromwich Albion now. Look at the state they're in. They've got a football
Was
club.
he reputationally damaged at Newcastle, though? That it's been hard to shake off?
Well, we discussed the idea of the characterisation of a dinosaur because ultimately he gets called a dinosaur, and he resisted that because, again, the Villa situation. I feel like sometimes, because of my affection for the man, and also because I know him, people automatically think that I'm jumping to his defence. I think it was a bad job at West Bromwich Albion, bad job to take, and a bad job that he did there. But I look at Aston Villa, and I know what was in that dressing room. Gabia Bonglaho at the end of his career and people like that were not helping the cause. And I know that there was a financial meltdown in that space and it needed to be addressed. And they nearly got out of the division. And the beneficiary of Bruce's problems was Dean Smith.
You are defending because Villa
I'm giving an alternative view.
Look, he did really well at Hull. He took them to a cup final, by the way, Jim. Probably should have beat Arsenal.
They were ahead, weren't they?
Yeah. But when he went to Villa, it was like, okay, he's on the way down. And he went to Sheffield Wednesday, he didn't rush. I mean, actually, he went through a couple of bereavements as well, which was difficult for him. And then he took the ultimate job, which was the Newcastle job, which was always one that was he was coveted for him, one he wanted.
Well, this is interesting. Go on, Simon.
But the backstory is this, and it's a different story, and it's not defending, it's given an alternate point of view. If you think it's defending, it's just given a different set of circumstances and facts.
Yeah.
He left Hull because the owner's son wanted to get involved with transfer policy and wanted to take it away from Steve, and he just got him promoted. And he didn't want that relationship. He got on very well with the father, but he didn't get very well with the son. So he leaves Hull.
Yeah, but to support someone's argument, if you're going to allow all those backstories to be used, then the ones against him you have to use as well.
Well, they are. They're there. They're evident.
Well, they are, because he's saying himself about players saying he couldn't take training sessions.
But they're evident. The arguments that are against him are there. What isn't there is an alternate view, which is I'm providing in context. So you go to Aston Villa, a club that was in absolute free... I told him not to go to Villa. I told him to take a job. I even said to him, maybe go back to Palace, which would have burnt my backside. Palace needed a new manager. Pardew went in there. It might have been a good job to go to London. He had an opportunity to get the England manager's job. He was in the mix and interviewed for the England manager's job. So that's where he was thought of at that particular time. I think on the whole, he's done a decent... If anyone's going to have a problem with Steve Bruce, let me tell you who it's going to be. Me. No, because he let me down and he knows he did.
A lot of Newcastle fans getting in touch. Here's Ken, a Newcastle fan. Rafa's team beat Manchester City 2-1 at St James's Park. Steve Bruce had a 27 win rate percentage at Newcastle. Now that's terrible. 2 wins in the last 22 games. He wasn't wanted ultimately because he wasn't doing what he was there to do.
13th. They finished 12th and 13th under his tenure. Listen, if the Newcastle fans didn't want him, that's their gift. My view is that he wasn't really given a fair rub of the green. There was journalists. I sat in a room with Craig Hope, with you in Newcastle, and saw the agenda and listened to the agenda. And with due respect to Steve, I am fond of him. He is my friend, and I do want to give balance in the conversation. But also, I do want to call it for what it is. There were times at Newcastle where it wasn't great. But if you finish 12th and 13th in the league, if you look at the statistics, just for a point of reference, Steve Bruce got 100 million over 2 years. And the points that he achieved cost Newcastle £111,000 per point. Eddie Howe at this moment in time is spending at £250,000 a point. If you're getting £300 million of investment in your team as opposed to 100, you might get a better side, mightn't you?
Yeah, but Eddie Howe did get them to the top four.
Look what Eddie
because
Howe...
he got £300 million of investment.
But look what Joe Linton did. And
I put that to him.
These players that he bought and couldn't get a tune out of.
And I put it to him, Almiron, Joe Linton, hang on a second, these are players that you bought, they're on your watch, look at them now, that's on you.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.